Hello, and welcome to the Child Care Business Coach. My name is Evelyn Knight. So I am just going to dive right in today since I know so many of you are anxious to hear about the research I've done pertaining to COVID-19 or coronavirus, whichever you prefer to call it. And I know a lot of you are just really anxious right now. I've received so many messages about just what to do right now, and I think we are all a little bit lost. So I've been just doing a lot of research and talking to several different professionals on what we should do within our centers and our program. So I have a lot of information for you guys. I've spoken to my lawyer, insurance agent, a doctor, a couple nurses, and even my HR expert that I go to for different information. And so let's just dive in. First of all, let's talk about insurance. I think that's the biggest thing that everybody is afraid of right now. We're all afraid of getting shut down and having no income. So as I was planning this episode, and as I did my Facebook Live regarding this, I did decide that I am not going to actually share with you guys what my particular plan is, but I am just going to give you the information that I've discovered through my research so that you can just decide for yourself what you want to do. I think it's really important that each one of us comes up with a plan that is right for our centers and our specific information. And I really don't want to influence you at all on that. So let's get to it. The information I have, first of all, from insurance. When I initially called my insurance agent, he basically told me that there is nothing that's going to protect me and there is no coverage from this. But as I did some digging, I found some other information that I did question him on, and it looks like there are ways to get coverage on this. I do have to start out and specify by saying to you guys, I am not a lawyer. This is not meant to be legal advice in any way. None of this on this episode. I am not an insurance agent, so I cannot advise you in any way. Not to mention every single one of our policies is going to be, they're going to be different, right? I am not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. This is all just information that I have gathered while researching for my own personal center. And I'm just sharing with you guys the information that I've obtained through my research. So just to qualify that. But what he was telling me is, at first he thought that we might be covered under a communicable disease endorsement, which I do have. But then it turns out that that endorsement is very specific to certain types of communicable diseases and certain types of conditions. It doesn't pertain to my entire center having to close due to communicable diseases. So I called my lawyer and I asked him, okay, what happens? And I had him go over my insurance policy. And I do have something that's called a civil authority endorsement. And just so that you guys know, endorsements are kind of like additions onto your insurance policy. They're added benefits. So we may not all have the same endorsements. For example, I have what's called a terrorist endorsement on mine, which ironically has nothing to do with like what we think of as terrorism. It would actually cover like if there was an active assailant situation, like, you know, if somebody came into my center with a gun, that is an endorsement. There's several different endorsements we can have. The civil authority endorsement basically states that if the government forces us to shut down for any reason, if any kind of civil authority shuts us down for any reason, I am covered. So I called my insurance agent back on that, and he told me that he wasn't sure and he would have to call his underwriters and get a hold of legal, and that was that pretty much. Now, after my lawyer read my coverage policy, though, he says it's absolutely that they would have to do it. So take that with a grain of salt. I would definitely call your insurance agent, though, and ask them, what kind of coverage do you have? Ask them specifically if you have civil authority insurance. One thing I have to note on that my lawyer did tell me is that it only covers me if we're shut down. If I choose to close, I do not have insurance coverage. On the other hand, the way my contracts with my parents are written, if parents choose to keep their children out, I am covered. If I force a close, it is a little bit, there's a lot of gray area there. He said that my contracts are very vague in that area where I can try to charge parents whether I close or not, but they would probably have a case against it. So it would be difficult to actually enforce that. Now, however, if I stay open and parents who are scared choose to not bring their children, I absolutely have a right to continue charging them for their tuition. I'm not saying that's what I'm going to do. I'm just telling you guys the facts. Most of us, our parent handbook are written in very broad and generic terms. And this is where the gray area comes into play. So in this, I'm talking about the area in our parent handbooks that talks about how parents are buying a spot in our centers that they are responsible to pay whether the child is in attendance or not. So the problem comes up that it doesn't specifically address closures. In a different part of my handbook, it does. I do specifically go into it. So in that case, my lawyer said that if it went to court, I would probably win a case, but it would cost so much money to go to court that it would just be cheaper for me to let it go. So that can cause some pretty scary situations, right? For most of us out there, that's just pretty scary. I speak to a lot of you every week that can't afford to go a month or 2 weeks even, or even a week without that income. You can't afford to pay your staff and mortgages and whatnot. So I know it's very scary to think of not having income. So that's where I wanted to start. That's why I suggest absolutely call your insurance agent, see exactly where you stand so that you can come up with a plan ahead of time and figure out what you're going to do. On that note, I also wanted to just bring something else up that has been really bothering me. Throughout the Facebook groups and Instagram I'm on, I've noticed some almost shaming that is happening from mainly its directors who really don't understand what it's like from an owner's perspective. And so if you're listening and you feel like it is unethical or it would be horrible for an owner to charge parents, whether they're in attendance or not, if they're open, I just have to tell you guys, it has to be a personal decision for each one of us. Just remember, you don't know every person's specific situation. So many people I talk to, their house is writing on their centers. They took out seconds on their house to make their dream of being a business owner come true. And now this threat is really just threatening their entire livelihood, their homes, their families. So before you jump to judgment, before you think that some of these owners are horrible people for wanting to stay open no matter what, just remember that you do not know their situation. The other thing is that as an owner myself, I know I have so many parents coming to me and they're scared. They need childcare. They are hour-to-hour employees. And if they don't have childcare to get to work, they can't pay their bills. They're afraid they won't be able to pay their rent and their mortgage. And how are they going to put food on the table? So they too are terrified for me to make the decision to shut down my center. So just really keep that in mind before you judge people, that you don't really know the whole story. You don't know the big picture of what somebody else might be facing. You might be in an area where people don't need to work because they have great benefits that will cover them, or they can even work from home. But I can tell you in the area that I live in, that isn't the case. Most of these people are hourly employees, and they, as of right now, they don't know if they're going to get paid if they don't work. So they're scared. There is a lot of fear out there right now. So before you jump to judgment, just remember that there's a lot of really, really scared people out there right now. And I'm just really hoping that if you're one of those people who is just terrified for your business, for your livelihood, for your staff even. I know I do worry about my staff. I want to make sure they're safe. I hope this information will put you at least a little bit at ease and help you to start formulating a plan. Having a plan will take so much anxiety off your shoulders. So let's get back to the content. So the next thing I want to talk about is liability issues. That is a big deal. If you decide to stay open, or even if it hasn't come to that yet, we still need to really protect ourselves from a liability standpoint. Some of the things that my lawyer was telling me about were that a lot of the things that the CDC is recommending are things that we should be doing anyway to protect ourselves from lawsuits. He was explaining to me that even if an outbreak of mumps or measles or even like a really bad outbreak of chickenpox comes, that would open us up to a lawsuit. This is no different than the lawsuits that we could be open to every single day if we're not doing our due diligence. So just keep that in mind. That being said, there are some extra steps we can take that will really help us. And the first one that I know I'm taking is we're actually creating what's called a hold harmless or an indemnification clause. And what that basically states is that if you choose to stay open or just throughout the normal course of operations, if a child were to get sick and something happened, parents can't hold us liable. Now, I do want to note that they can still try and sue us if we do not do our due diligence and we drop the ball on something that we are mandated to do. So it is a layer of protection that it will help us from frivolous lawsuits. And it will just make it that much harder for a parent to go after us, or a group of parents if there happens to be an outbreak. But if you're not doing your due diligence, if you are not doing everything in your power that you're mandated to do, you don't necessarily have to go overboard, but if you're not doing everything that is mandated, they can still sue us. So this is really just an extra layer of protection, and every extra layer of protection we can take to protect our centers, our staff, and our students is best, right? So just keep that in mind, that doesn't mean that you can be careless and stop sanitizing and not make your employees do their proper hand washing. We still need to cover our bases and do what we're supposed to do. But it is just an extra added layer of protection. And the more we strive to protect our businesses, the better off we are. If you are a member of the Child Care Business Professionals Mastermind Group, I am actually providing you with the indemnification clause that my lawyer is finishing up for me right now. That will actually be posted probably Tuesday at the latest so that you can have your parents sign that and get that layer of protection for yourself. That will be available on our membership page. So that being said, it's really important that we are following all our mandated guidelines when it comes to hand washing and all of the sanitation guidelines. Your illness policy, whatever we're mandated by your state licensing, you have to absolutely make sure that it is being followed to a T right now. Something I'm doing with my staff, I'm going through and just doing some really quick retraining on all of that. We've created a Facebook group for my staff, and I just do some really quick live videos of myself going over it. I require them to watch it so that we can remember our hand washing procedures, sanitation procedures, just going over everything in detail as a refresher, so that those mandated courses that we all have to take in the beginning to make sure that we are keeping things properly clean so that we can stop the spread of communicable diseases, just really enforcing that. And just sanitation schedules. That is where you can protect yourself, just making sure that everything is being done exactly as it should. I've actually added a couple different sanitation rounds to our day just for some added layer of protection. And one of the other things I'm going to be doing is I am actually going to be pulling sensory from our centers right now, just because the children's hands are in sensory all day. When you think of Play-Doh, it's so hard. I mean, how do we sanitize Play-Doh, right? So things like that, and close contact type of games. We're going to try and do things that just really try and keep people a little bit away from each other. I know that's so hard in the preschool setting, but putting buckets out also, so that if you have infants and toddlers, every time their mouth touches it, have a bucket ready that you can throw that toy in, and know that everything in that bucket has to be sanitized with bleach thoroughly. But making sure, of course, that the children can't get to the bucket and keeping them safe from the, sanitation supplies and whatnot. But it's just easy. It's so hard for our teachers to stop and sanitize, right? So instead, if you just have like a Rubbermaid container even available, where as soon as they see something going in the mouth, they can just grab it, throw it in a bucket for later, maybe cycle something else through. That would really make their lives easier and help just contain illnesses. If you're really low on supplies and toys are just kind of scarce, maybe go to a thrift store, get some, cheap toys or something and make sure you just sanitize them thoroughly before putting it in your classroom, just to make sure you have enough of supplies that you can really just turn things pretty quickly. So that is something that we do regularly anyway. But just going over that stuff with your staff again, just really, really making sure that they know and they are doing it. That is how you can help protect yourself from any kind of due diligence lawsuit. The other thing too is just going over your sick policies with your parents and really stressing to them the importance of keeping their children home if there's any sign of illness. I actually created a sign for my center, and it's taped to my front door on the outside, and it literally says, "Do not enter if any of these." And I put the fever of 100.4, cough, shortness of breath. And if you want, I will add that to my show notes. Actually, I will just add that to my show notes. It is on my Facebook group. If you're not a member of my Facebook group, I do add a lot of the resources that I talk about on this podcast into the Facebook group. And the group is actually at facebook.com/group/childcare business coach. That's where I post a lot of this. So you can literally just take mine and print it. It is pretty generic. It has a stop sign on it, and it just lists and it actually says straight on it, "Do not enter this building if anyone in your household has had the following symptoms." And I just list the symptoms, and then I just tell them to call me for further instructions. The other thing I've done is just put a policy in that if anything, I will not accept the children back without a doctor's release right now. So something to think about there. And really just same with your employees. I know right now, you guys, it's really hard. As directors and owners, call-ins are so hard for us to deal with, and we get irritated and frustrated. But right now is not the time. Right now is the time where we need to be really understanding and just let our staff call in when they need to. And I know that is so hard when we're trying to maintain ratio and trying to just coordinate everything. But it is so important right now just to let it roll off your shoulders and cut them slack right now. Do I know some of them will take advantage? Absolutely. I know that you guys are dealing with staff out there that will absolutely take advantage. But right now is not the time to worry about it. It's not the time to even think about it. Just let it go. You do not want to open yourself up to a lawsuit. So that is just something, reviewing with them and just really sticking to your policy. If your policy says they can't come to work with any of these symptoms, then you cannot get upset with them when they call in. So pertaining to staff, I'm also actually creating a fitness for duty form. And again, if you're a member, this will be available for you. And what that is it's going to be a form that will mandate that they have to be vetted by a doctor before they can come back to work. I do think that might also help us with some of the frivolous call-ins, just since they know they're going to have to see a doctor before we'll let them back in. So it's just a form that'll have to be signed and filled out that they are fit for duty, along with a doctor's note. I will absolutely have them sign that form, as well as bringing me a doctor's note. As for the children, if they're absent, we will be calling to see why. If they are sick, we will be requiring a doctor's note before they can come back. I am not having my family sign a daily health statement yet, but I actually live in a bedroom community that we do not have any confirmed cases in the city I'm actually in, but we do have some about 45 miles away. The minute we have a single confirmed case, I will have parents start signing health statements in order to drop off. We will absolutely start taking temperatures at the door. So I'm also creating an infectious disease plan or a strategic plan. And again, for members, I will put this up for you guys. It will be available. And what that is going to include is workplace safety precautions, which will include just the general, our policies anyway, that we are mandated, and also the things we're doing to go above and beyond right now that I'm requiring my staff to do. All of that will be in writing. Each member of my staff will be given a copy and have to sign an acknowledgement for it. I will probably create a video for my staff to watch that will train them on it just to make sure that they really understand it. And that will, again, include the extra safety precautions we're taking and the things we already do that we're mandated to do. The other thing is I will include the mandated medical checkups if anyone isn't present at the center for any sick reasons, including staff and children. I'll have the guidelines in there for how they're going to adapt their curriculum to choose activities that limit contact, which again includes what I was talking about with sensory. I will have my plan on if a positive case comes up in my center, what are we going to do? And a side note on that, I know the CDC is recommending for childcare centers that we close anywhere from 48 hours to 5 days just to do deep cleaning. They are not actually forcing anyone to close at this time if there's a positive case. They're just basically saying to close long enough to do deep cleaning. So the other thing that my infectious disease or strategic plan, whichever you want to call it, is going to include is a means of communication. So if something were to happen, how am I going to communicate with all my families and all my staff members? That I will write a letter out to let my parents know where they can find the communication, how it'll be done, in case something were to happen. The plan is also going to include how I was saying that we will call every child that is absent to see why they were absent, just so that we can, keep really good track. It will spell out exactly when it's time to call the health department, if there's, even if we don't have any confirmed cases, if we just have some abnormal amount of absences, right? Because one of the things I'm nervous about too is if parents aren't going to really tell us, if they make other, just because they need to get to work and they're too afraid that we're not going to let their children come, like if they keep their child at home a day or two and then they just don't tell us why they really did it. So that's why we'll be notifying the health department if there's an abnormal amount of absences. And I will go over my emergency procedures that are already in place. I will take the parts of it that pertain to this out and put it in this infectious disease plan. So if you're a member of my group, that part I will probably leave blank for you. That way you can take your emergency procedures and put it in. And if you don't have emergency procedures and you are a member, let me know so we can make sure to start creating some for you. Very, very important for us to have those. So, and again, I've talked a lot about benefits for my members. If you would like to know information about that, I will put it in the show notes. But I do provide a lot of different things. Anytime I create something like this, I provide it to my members. There's also a lot of information I just share on my Facebook, my free Facebook group also. So that's a good place to start if you'd like more information too. But I am putting the membership link and my Facebook group in the show notes. I'm also going to outline a lot of this also so that you have a lot of this in writing. One last recommendation. If you choose to stay open and you have families that, let's say, are able to work remotely or teachers that aren't working, but they still need to bring their children in, a really good idea I saw while I was researching on King County, Washington's website is to stagger the times that parents are allowed to bring their children in order to keep your group sizes smaller and make it easier to keep children from congregating. So for example, maybe having like different shifts and telling parents who have the means to watch their children also, to bring, maybe this group of children can come from 7 to noon and this group of children can come from noon to 6, something like that. So our classrooms just aren't so packed and don't have as many children in it. So just a really good suggestion, I think. parents should be pretty understanding of this, since they will probably need to get some work done from home and whatnot. But they're not going to want their children in a room with a bunch of other children either. So I think it's just how we present this information to them and how we just explain it, that, we are really trying to make sure we can kind of keep them separated. So we're going to just do half this hours and half. And it might come down to the fact that we have to assign times, but I think we can all figure that out. I actually do have one more thing I wanted to address. The federal government actually came up with something I heard about this morning, that it looks like they are going to be providing sick pay and some other things that I'm not 100% clear on yet. So I am going to do some research, and as soon as I really figure it out, I'm going to talk to an accountant and a couple other professionals that I know. I'll try to get somebody on the podcast who can explain this to us. And if I have to, I'll do an unscheduled release of that episode, so that you guys don't have to wait a whole other week like I normally do. That way we can get more information. I think that'll make us feel so much better about sick pay and whatnot and what's going on. And if there are any kind of relief packages in the bill that was passed last night, I will try and get all of that figured out for you guys and get that listed as quickly as I can. I do know that the SBA has something in place also. So I will get more information as soon as I can talk to some professionals who really know this stuff, and try to get somebody on the podcast too that can explain this. Might be difficult, short notice to get somebody on. So even if I just get them to explain it to me so I can bring it back to you, but hopefully I can get someone on that will help us out with that. So I'm going to end it at that tonight. I hope everybody out there stays safe, and you guys try to stay positive. Try not to worry too much. I know we are all worried about our businesses and our centers right now. So join the conversation on our Facebook group. I will put the link in our show notes, and feel free to message me any questions you guys have. I will talk to you guys next week or sooner.